In this short video we're going to cover the organelle known as the plasma membrane, learning about the structure and the function of them. You may have heard the organelle being called several things, such as the plasma membrane, cell surface, or the phospholipid bilayer. The membrane is found on the surface of an animal, a eukaryotic cell, sort of like skin on the body, protecting the inside of the cell from the external environment, basically everything that goes on outside the cell. However, in plant and eukaryotic cells, such as bacteria, the plasma membrane, or phospholipid bilayer, sits just underneath the cell wall. So, to put it simple, the plasma membrane is made up of lipids and proteins, lipids being made up of fatty acids and proteins being made up of amino acids, molecules you collect from your diet. So now we know what the structure of the plasma membrane is, let's look at the function. You may know or have been taught that the plasma membrane's role is to regulate substances in and out of the cell. Also that the plasma membrane houses receptor proteins or molecules which allow for the cell to respond to the outside environment through chemicals such as hormones. If you were to write this answer in a test, you would score a good mark as the statements are correct. But what does these statements actually mean? Well, let's look at substances in and out of the cell. The plasma membrane is a fluid in motion, but tightly fixed, like two bouncers stood at a door. Now, these bouncers will only let you in if you have a ticket. If not, then there's no way of getting in. Unless you are a virus that has printed a very believable fake ticket, but that's another story. An example of this is glucose. Glucose will find proteins on the plasma membrane, known as carrier proteins. These proteins will bind to glucose and transport into the cell. This is the same for other substances moving in the cell to the outside of the cell. This is what is meant to regulate substances in and out. And secondly, cells need to monitor the outside environment to keep up with demand or slow processes down. An example of this is insulin. Beta cells in the pancreas will detect low blood sugar levels and in return will start producing and releasing insulin into the bloodstream. But why? Well, remember like glucose carrier proteins we just mentioned? Well, they only work if insulin is bound to an associated protein on the plasma membrane. Basically, it's telling the bouncers to let glucose into the party. This is why if you're a type 2 diabetic, insulin will struggle binding to the special proteins on the plasma membrane, therefore stopping the glucose from entering the cells. Using the bouncer example again, it's basically telling the bouncers to carry on not letting nothing in. I hope you found this helpful, although we dived in a little deep. All you need to really take away from this is that the plasma membrane role is to regulate substances in and out of the cell, and that plasma membrane houses receptor molecules which allow the cell to respond to the outside environment through chemicals such as hormones, as mentioned before. And it's easy saying these statements but not understanding them, so I wanted to dive in a little deep so you can just get a little bit more understanding on why we say these statements. Okay, until next time.